evening and welcome to National Matters. I'm Patrick Soko, and today on the program our guest is the People's Alliance for Change PARC President ANDYFORD BANDA. Mr. BANDA needs no introduction. He has contested general elections and he is among the key political figures that we have in this country. Today our topic of discussion is what are the ingredients to Zambia's economic development, and Mr. Banda is going to help me discuss that in detail. Welcome to the program, Mr. Banda.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Soko, and good evening to the viewers out there. I'm happy to be on the program this evening.
We are happy that you honored our invitation.
No, I'm grateful for the platform.
Indeed. To just get started, first of all, Mr. Banda, we understand that, yes, PARC is not a new political party, and PARC has been there, and it was competitive. We want to just hear from you, because after the general election in 2021, you were nowhere to be seen, and you were no longer commenting on national matters. And here on this program, we thought, let's get to know where Mr. Banda has been and what PARC has been up to.
Yeah, like you have rightly said, the People's Alliance for Change is a party that was formed in 2016 on January 10. We have participated in 2 general elections and the countless by-elections. As you may be aware, after 2021 elections, we also participated in the Kawata by-election, which we didn't do well, and I think that necessitated the need for us to take a break, introspect, and also come back energized. We also looked at the fact that there was a new government in place, and then we wanted to give them an opportunity, to work, without, tossing them here and there, and to see how best they could settle and implement some of the policies. But we believe that, the time has come for us to contribute and to continue our journey from where we left it. So the PARC will always be there. It will never die. We have to make sure that until we achieve the targets that we have set, we have to continue to be relevant. It's not easy, but we don't have a choice. For the good of the country, we love our country, so we have to continue fighting.
Indeed, and you mentioned one key aspect in your preamble, which is that you were looking at the aspect of you as a political party going on the drawing board and also give space to the current administration to be able to settle. So far, what would be your assessment in terms of how they have settled, and that where do you get in terms of you now, because you say now the time is right for you to intervene?
I think there's still a lot of work to be done. I mean, nothing much has been done. Of course, we have had things like debt restructuring, trying to sort out that department. But we believe that a lot of raw hanging fruit that the UPND government are not taking advantage of, and the idea of just relying on debt restructuring is not going to help them to actually deliver some of the promises or to change people's lives. Because sometimes you can be in the opposition and trying to deliver certain promises, and then when you get into government, you discover that some things are not working as you had planned. So what you need to do is to come up with a plan B to ensure that you deliver. Because what's important is you need to look at not mainly the promises. Yes, the promises are important, how you're going to deliver them. You need to convince the people. But when you see that there are challenges that are there in government, you need to actually counter, you need to come up with a plan that would help you. Because the issues that we're looking at is the challenges that the government is facing. What are the challenges? We are looking at unemployment, we are looking at the exchange rate, we are looking at lack of support for small businesses, the farming sector has been struggling. All those things are things that the government is looking at. So whatever they had to do, or whatever they have to do, if the debt restructuring was taking long, they needed to come up with plan B on how to actually go around and achieve certain things. in terms of stabilizing the currency, in terms of supporting the SMEs, in terms of providing employment, in terms of ensuring that the agriculture sector is working, because those are the areas that we believe that they could actually easily work on. So we believe that UPND government has really struggled, and that's the reason why we're here to actually give them some of the alternatives and some of the ideas that we have, and also to just give them oh, here you're not doing it right, here you're not going in the right direction. That's the idea of democracy. Democracy is for us to offer solutions, to also tell them that you're not doing this right. Because when you're in government, when you're in power, and the way we have seen it over the years, people are always comfortable. They think they're doing everything right. They're taking things the way they've been taken, defending everything. So we're there to tell them, you're going wrong, this is how you should do. And also we've seen that there's a lot of space in the opposition. I think the opposition also, we believe that we have a role to play in the opposition to make sure that we also come up with our own politics of ideas and solutions, politics of balanced objective.
Well, our dear viewers, later on you'll be given an opportunity to interact with our guest via dialing the number that is on your screen, and also leaving us a message. We'll be glad to read your text messages regarding our topic of discussion, and as well as you asking our guest questions that you may think are pertinent. Now, moving on the program, the question that I'm asking Mr. Banda is that we're talking about economic development. First of all, whatever we are doing, even politics has to point to economic development. That's why we talk about politics, even social issues. They are all pointing to one thing, that is development. Now, Mr. Banda, the question that I'm asking today is, what are the key ingredients to Zambia's economic development?
First of all, before we look at the ingredients, we need to look at what the government is focusing on. And how we gauge what the government is focusing on is looking at some of the issues that the government is looking at addressing. And one of the things we can pick is from the President's end of year speech. From our assessment, we did realize that the UPND government is mainly focusing on or relying on the debt restructuring program, to actually help them, reignite the economy. It's also relying on the mining sector to help them, ensure that we work around things like the kwacha, especially the kwacha. I don't think about if the mining sector can help us deal with job creation, but it can cushion a bit, with the kwacha. The president was clear in his speech on the issue of the agriculture sector and how we can boost production with maize. But the plan is not as clear as we have seen, recently in terms of the plans that we have seen with the mining sector. There we can say that there are some clear plans that we can tell that if these plans are implemented, there will be a bit of improvement. But our bone of contention, like you've asked, what are the ingredients of an economy? I believe that for an economy to actually grow, we cannot continue to rely on the mining sector. You must remember that we've had the mining sector. It was a key economy under colonialism, and we picked it up from there all the way up to today. And I think if you hear most of the speeches by the Ministry of Finance, most of the things it talks about is mining, mining, mining. So I think we are missing it in that area. What we need to look at is that how can we actually take advantage of other sectors that can create jobs, empower people, and build the economy quickly. So mining is not the biggest issue that it's a biggest issue because it's the backbone of our economy, but we need to also now start looking elsewhere. We need to start looking at other ingredients, like is it technology? If you look at some economies like in America, if in 1920 they used to rely a lot of like steel. If you look at a lot of billionaires, the Andrew Carnegie and all those people, all these banks like JP Morgan Chase, they came from financing steel businesses. But if you look at how the economy of the United States is working today, it's in technology. A lot of billionaires are in technology. So if the American economy has evolved over time, and today it's more tech-based. We cannot be dependent on the mining sector. The government rightly says that 90% of our foreign exchange earnings come from mining, and that's the only way we can cushion our dollar. But we have to look at how can we enhance technology, in our economy to actually change the lives of the people, to give them jobs, to sort out issues like cholera. It's technology. Technology can help us to sort out all those things. So there are a lot of low-hanging fruits that we can use today, using technology, using modern techniques and stuff like that to actually ensure that we provide jobs quickly. I believe that the low-hanging fruits are there. I believe that, yes, we need to sort out things that are happening in the mining sector. We've heard the Minister of Finance talking about how a number of mining companies that were existing, that were about to pull out of Zambia, but because of the change of government, they had a change of heart. Now they are reinvesting in new mining development. We have seen that they are trying to sort out issues to do with Mopani. Even if us, we have a lot of questions around that transaction, we have seen that they're trying to sort out issues to do with KCM. Even if we have seen that there's 2 delays in concluding that department, we have seen that there's Shaft 28 in Luansha that is supposed to come to be working. So, but these, yes, let them work. Right now, like end of 2023, our production was less than 700,000. I don't have the official figures, but it should be between 680,000 to 700,000 metric tons of copper. And our peak production was about 860,000 metric tons of copper. So just to move from our drop to get to our peak production, it will take a lot of work, So we need to actually look at how can we look at other areas. How can we, sort out the issues to do with SMEs who are struggling? How can we deal with the issue of the kwacha? In as much as we are looking at the mining sector, what are the other issues? We've been focusing too much about production, but there's also, the idea of holding on to the kwacha. We need to, to the dollar, in this country. We let the dollar go anyhow, and then we just hope that, the mining sector is going to bring back the dollar, which is not working. So we need to also look at the fact that, we are letting loose, of the dollars. And the reason is simple, is because we are not supporting Zambian businesses. A lot of businesses that we're supporting are foreign, and most of the foreigners are taking their profits outside the country. And when they're taking their profits outside the country, they're taking the dollars. And that's the reason why the dollar is weak, because, really nothing much has changed in terms of production. So there's a warning, that, the fuel prices might be adjusted, because I'm not sure if there was even any subsidies, but we are told from the report we read today in the papers that, the fuel subsidies were depleted in the last 4 months. So that is going to reflect, in the next fuel prices, which means that, oh wow, we might actually expect an increment, in the fuel prices. But we're not looking at the fundamentals. We're not looking at what are the fundamentals that can actually help us. Yes, one of the fundamentals is mining, but what are the other fundamentals?
Interesting. While we are still on the subject of mining, there's another interesting view that you bring out. But we see that the Zambian government, through ZCCMIH, still has a good shareholding under Mopani. But you still mentioned that you are not comfortable with the transaction, or you're not happy with the deal. What are some of the issues that you're not comfortable with as a party?
First of all, when the UPND government, when President Hakainde Hichilema was campaigning, he did promise, that he's going to run a transparent government, because transparency is a hallmark of good governance. That was the promise. So now what happened was that when the deal of Mopani was first announced in November, somewhere there, when it was, indicated that, there's this company called International Resource Holdings, which is going to take over Mopani. We did try to search for that company to see their background, why they have been doing mining, how they have managed companies and whatnot. We discovered that we didn't find any information about that company, called International Resource Holdings. But we know, and we were told that International Resource Holdings was part of a company called International Holdings Company from Abu Dhabi, both of them from Abu Dhabi. So later on, when the deal was finally announced by the president, I think that was on the 22nd of December, we actually rechecked and we found that, the International Resources Holdings, they had built a new website. And that website looked like it had just generic information of a company that has just been constituted, which has got no operations. We don't even know who the shareholders are. We don't know who the management are. We don't know what experience they have in mining. And that raised some red flags for us. So the first thing we did was that we wrote to International Resources Holdings based on the email that they provided on their website, which up to date they have not responded. And it's a month now, they have not responded. Then we said, okay, look, ZCMIH must have done a due diligence. They must know this company. They must have the information about this company. So we requested the same information. We wrote to ZCMIH to say, look, we want to know who are the shareholders of this IRH. Where do they do their mining? What are their financials? Who is in management? And whatnot. But up to now, ZCMIH has not responded as well. And this is a government that talked about transparency when they were in the opposition. And when people start accusing them of being corrupt because they don't want to cooperate with us, asking just basic information. We didn't ask them to give us a contract of what they signed between ZCMIH and IRH. We didn't ask for that. We were just asking for basic information because we knew that probably the contract was still being worked on and there could be some information that might not be for public good. But this was just, basic, information that we're asking. If you go to, for example, SQM website, you find all this information. You find, the financials, you find where they're running mines, you find the top management, you find how many employees they have, where they have done their projects and whatnot. But for this company, there's zero. So the point is that we are concerned because we don't want the same situation that has happened with KCM to happen with Mopani. Because we can be excited today. We can be saying, oh, Mopani has got a new shareholder from Abu Dhabi. Because we always get excited. We think that everyone who comes out of Dubai is going to bring all the money. Some of these companies are just registered there, as shell companies. They are just registered. Maybe it's just a deal they're trying to make. For crying out loud, it could be a deal with some people in Zambia. We are not saying that. We don't have the information because they don't want to give us information. So we have the right to speculate, So we have been concerned about that. And now, outside this transaction, we are concerned about the UPND government's way of dealing with things because this is not a transparency, that they promised the people of Zambia. This is not the transparency that they were preaching, when they were in the opposition. Because it's easy. I've been told, one of the ministers says, no, this deal is okay. If they want more information, let them use the access information bill. But the question is that, okay, fine, we can go to court, we can do it. But why should we be fighting? Why can't they just, why can't ZCMIH say, no, this is this company, these are the shareholders, this and that. Okay, they don't have history, but they've got the money. They want to put in money in this. So our arrangement is that they're going to put in money, and this is how these things are going. It's as simple as that. But all they want is that, no, we should go to court or we should go to the Human Rights Commission, to try and complain to them, say, no, these ones, they didn't give us the information, so you take action. This is not, what a transparent government invites to its table. Especially that when they have citizens like us who are asking basic, objective information. We're not asking for too much. So these are the things that we've had issues with the government. And this is one of the things. There is another issue that we looked at, we'll talk about that. But from the mining sector, we have this issue. We also have an issue to the fact that up to now, Mopani has not been concluded. Of course, the Minister of Finance, I think 2 weeks ago, they said that they have one more issue that they need to deal with. With the creditors, they need to actually sign something like a court agreement, like some kind of a settlement agreement through court with the creditors, so that before they start operating. Obviously, maybe creditors want a guarantee that they're going to be paid their money. So we're hoping that in this quarter we can have answers about Mopani and International Resources Holdings. We are hoping that in this quarter Mopani can start operating. We do understand and we know and we understand that the government didn't have any choice in picking Mopani. It is the only company that was suitable, to take over KCM. I mean, sorry, Vendetta, yeah. It is the only company that was suitable to take over KCM. We do understand, but it's taking time. They told us about this agreement almost now. It will be 6 months very soon. And the miners were excited. They even thought that they were going to enjoy their Christmas. The Christmas has passed.
Now, Mr. Banda, before we move out of this subject, there's another component pertaining to how you suggested that the Zambian government can support the Kwacha. You are suggesting that the government is not supporting enough in terms of local investors. But what is your justification on that aspect?
Yeah. So so now I'll get back to what you asked about. The government owns 49% shareholding in Mopani.
Yes.
So first of all, our view is that we do not want the government to be running business. The government must build policies. We need to put them, the economy. We need to put the economy in the hands of Zambians. Zambians must own 49%. In Mopani, not the government. I hope that this is the last deal that the government is trying to do, to be able to run. These parastatals have not worked everywhere in Africa. There's a lot of stories about parastatals. You put your relatives there, they use them to, for abuse, giving contracts to your party members, to your relatives, to ministers are getting deals from all these parastatals, mining companies that are run by the government. So we don't want the government, to be running these businesses because they are prone to abuse. And then the other advantage is that once we put the means of production of the economy into the hands of Zambians, they are going to keep the money where? In Zambia. Because right now what is happening is that because Zambian businesses are not supported, Zambian businesses are struggling, they don't have any support, it has created a vacuum where a person will come from China and start running a small mine. A mine maybe that needs just about $500,000 investment or at most $1 million. But because we don't have a structure, that supports Zambians, to own mines, so we have left, that gap to everyone to run it, which is why everyone who is mining, whether they're mining, copper or very low grade, whatever money they're making, they're sending out. It's dollars going out. And on top of that, they've got employees. We've let, the immigration department has let, it's so porous, that a lot of foreign companies in this country are run by foreigners, and what does that do? It takes away the opportunities, from the Zambians themselves. There are a lot of companies that are run by foreigners where, the whole top management is foreign. So if you have 5 people who are in top management and on average each one earns $5,000, so yet one company can be sending as much as $25,000 plus out of this country. Now if you calculate the number of companies that are there, how many dollars is going out? We were talking about the issue to do with the TKC. There's a company called TKC. TKC is a company that is running the Konkola toll gate. I think it's a Konkola toll gate between Kasumbalesa and Chingola, or Chingola Kasumbalesa. Do you understand what I mean? So that stretch, you must remember that the road between Kitwe and Chingola had already been done. So the contractor who was given, to run that toll gate on the PPP agreement, just, he worked on the road between Chingola to Kasumbalesa, which is a 43-kilometer stretch, So now what our argument is that is a bankable project. That project, anyone, even you, Mr. Soko, if you were given that project, PPP agreement, a lot of financiers are going to come on board. Why is it like that? It's because, there's so much traffic on that road. There's so much traffic going into Kasumbalesa, going into Kasumbalesa, going to Congo, coming from Dar es Salaam, coming from South Africa, coming from Beira, coming from Windhoek, Walvis Bay, All those trucks are getting into Lubumbashi through Kasumbalesa, through Chingola, through Chirinabombwe. So there is so much traffic there. So our argument was that that contract, the PPP contract, should have been given either to the local engineers to run it, or local companies, so that we can keep the dollars here. But it was given to the Chinese. I mean, we did the search, from Papra, and we found that that company is owned by the Chinese. Now, you can imagine that for the next 18 years, the Chinese are going to get their returns maybe within the next 2, 3, 4 years. And for the next 18 years, they will remove a small percentage for maintenance, and they'll be taking all the money back to China. Now, the question is that how do you expect the dollar to stabilize when even straightforward things, that should be done by locals, are given to the foreigners? Even NAPSA, I mean, if the foreigners didn't have the capacity, they should have given NAPSA. The pensioners' money could have been safe, on that 43-kilometer stretch. Now, this is just one example. I talked about, mining, small minings. There's if you go along Kafio Road, if you're coming from Kafio roundabout, on the left, you find that there's a lot of companies that are selling second-hand motor vehicles, and all of them are foreign. They come from Pakistan, wherever they come from. So we're not saying that we should not welcome investors in this country, but we need to have what the president said: positive discrimination. We need to at least ensure that we protect certain aspects of the economy to the local people, to protect ourselves, and to also give opportunities to our people. How do we protect ourselves? We're protecting our economy because we're keeping a lot of dollars in-house. Now, someone is selling second-hand vehicles. When they make their money, why are they selling the money? Outside. Someone is running a toll gate. When they make their money, why are they selling the money? Outside. Someone is running a small mine. When they make their money, why are they selling the money? Outside. How do you expect the dollar to be strong? Because that money is not going to China in kwacha. That money is not going to Pakistan in kwacha. That money is not going wherever in kwacha. It's going there as what? Dollars. Those dollars that the mines are bringing in, which are supposed to strengthen the kwacha, they're being taken out. The moment they land, they're going out. The moment they land, they're going out. So, these are the things that the UPND government needs to look at seriously and say, what? I think we are missing it here. We need to change certain things, because we cannot just let the issue be porous. So this is one of the things that we've been proposing. So there has to be a restructuring in the way that we support local businesses. There is a way, there are policies that can be built that can make, local mines attractive, that can make local businesses attractive, that can make local SMEs attractive. And one of the policies is positive discrimination. We just discriminate so that, block making. I didn't talk about block making. Almost all the block making businesses in Zambia are run by foreigners. Now, Mr. Soko, are you telling me that, in Zambia we can afford to make our own blocks?
Actually, we do have Zambians who do that.
They do that. But you see, those opportunities have been taken over by foreigners who are making blocks. When they make that money, why are they taking the dollars? Back to Turkey, back to Lebanon, back to China, all these people that are making blocks. So tell me, if we're going to let the economy loose, how do we protect the dollars? So the impact of letting the economy loose is not just taking away the opportunities from the Zambians. The impact is that it's making the kwacha to be weak. The impact is that when the kwacha is weak, we're buying fuel at an expensive price. The impact is that when we buy fuel at an expensive price, the cost of living goes up because we are import dependent, and a whole lot of things that come with that. You understand what I mean? So we have to be strong. We need to be decisive. We need to have a strong government, that is going to say, what? We are going to positive discriminate. We need to protect the kwacha first. So all these businesses, even banks, will come on board. If the bank knows that, if Sunday Chanda in Kanchivia is building a school and is buying blocks from a Zambian company, the banks are going to finance that company because they know that there's money from CDF that will definitely.
But why don't you think such interventions don't really work? That other politicians don't find them attractive? What do you mean they don't? I mean, it's not because they're not attractive. It's because they just don't want. I mean, they're busy thinking about big things when there are a lot of small things. If you group them like 100,
they're going to actually protect the kwacha. The kwacha is going to be strengthened. The dollars will be kept in this country. We want investors. Let investors come and set up, a Volkswagen manufacturing company. Let them come and set up a Tesla manufacturing. Let them come and set up things that we cannot do as Zambians.
My basic understanding also about the kwacha and the economy is that we are where we are because we need more. It is expensive to find the dollar because we are not able to export more to have enough dollars in the country. Now, I want to bring to you this scenario, Mr. Banda, that I have observed in various localities. Probably you have as well. We have now malls that are led by our friends from Asia. So now these malls, most of the goods that are in their shops are imported. So now those days used to depend on a few malls that were existing, such as the common ones like Shopline, for example, just to give an example. Now we have these malls that are in almost every locality, and all those importers need dollars to bring those goods.
Yeah.
Don't you think that is equally adding to the pressure?
It is. And when we talk about production, the president clearly said that we need to, the question is that I'll come to the malls. How many times have we been closing Kasumbalesa border post? Because we can't export minimum. So the only way that minimum can get to Congo is by smuggling. Because the people in DRC, they need to eat. I used to live in Lubumbashi. I've lived in Kinshasa. I know those areas very well. So the only way that things can actually get there is by smuggling them there. Now, that is not how we should build our economy. Actually, the only disappointment from the president's speech is that in as much as he clearly indicated how we can export, minimum to Congo, he told us that I think you listened, I don't know if you were there at the end of your press.
I did listen.
Yes. He said that he already has an order of 1 million tons of minimum, not maize, minimum. So meaning that we can grow the minimum, then our milling companies can actually make minimum, and we are able to export. But he even said we don't have the minimum. Yes, we don't have it. So now the only disappointment is that for us as PAC, these are things that we spoke about before the 2021 elections. If we had been in government, we would have been reporting to say this was our plan on maize production, and this is what we have done. This is how far we have gone. In terms of production. So maize itself, the president said, if we can actually improve yield from the peasant farmers, if you can produce a hectare, the peasant farmers right now, they're able to produce about 2.6 tons of maize per hectare, which is far lower than what most of the commercial farmers are producing, which is like 10 tons per hectare. So what we need to do is that we need to actually build, the yield of the peasant farmers so that they should stop producing 2.6 tons and push them maybe to 7.5 tons and above. If a commercial farmer can produce 10 tons, obviously there are some situations in certain areas where there's issues of climate change and whatnot, but we can still make sure that we have at least a number of farmers, producing at least 7.5 tons per hectare. And one of the reasons why I believe why the farmers are not producing more is because they're not getting enough inputs. If you're going to have a medal of fertilizer, how do you expect to produce more and you don't have the money to buy fertilizer? So we need to actually restructure the FISIP or come up with a system that is going to actually empower the farmers and also empower the country to produce more and export so that we can actually end the much needed forex. Now, apart from that, we need to actually come up with policies of import substitution. We need to look at some of the things that we are consuming in this country. For example, the president gave a very good example about United Capital Fertilizer, which actually it's a good example. But we've had those companies like Trade Kings, Zambif, which are producing for local and exporting. Trade Kings the same thing. United Capital Fertilizer is doing fertilizer, producing local and exporting. So we need to go aggressive in that area because United Capital Fertilizer, it's employing about just 1,000 people, meaning that there's still a lot of gap for us to actually get as many people as possible, to do a lot of things for us to be able to maybe to employ 1,000 people So we can look at a lot of produce, or commodities and services that can be done here and that are needed in the Congo, that are needed in Tanzania, that are needed in Malawi, that are needed in Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Angola, Namibia, and Botswana, our neighbors. So we can actually implement that. But also we can look at the energy sector. Most of these countries that surround us, Zimbabwe, Congo, they need energy. South Africa needs energy. What can we do to ensure that we build in policies that can actually accelerate? Right now we're actually importing. We're importing power. For us to be able to think that there's no load shedding is because power is imported. But that power is imported based on taking away dollars. So we actually need to build a lot of these things. There are a lot of ideas. We have technology. We can, for example, get all the markets off the grid and put solar in markets. We can save a lot of power once we get all the markets off the grid and put solar. There are a lot of facilities that can run on solar. We don't have to build big power stations, solar, 40 megawatts, 100 megawatt solar power stations. We can have mini grids, that are able to sort out certain, areas, and we can stop importing power and export excess to Congo, to South Africa, and all that kind of thing. So now, we also need to actually build, certain, factories. Right now, a lot of young people in Zambia, and most of the suits, we don't, import the suits because there are a lot of young entrepreneurs who are tailoring or, I don't know how who are into clothing business, and we need to protect them. We need to protect them so that cheap goods from China or from wherever are not actually killing their markets. As much as their base is protected. So we need to protect those, and we can actually create more people to actually produce more goods. One of the things that Singapore did, simple things that they try to do, like obviously like they did, maybe ceramics, they also try to do like toys, manufacture toys locally. These are plastic things, you can manufacture them locally, you don't have to import everything. So we need to look at a lot of commodities and see, okay, can we build a factory in this one? Can we build a factory in this one? In Ghana, there's what they call the Ghana Free Zones boards, where it encourages people to manufacture things within Ghana as long as they can export at least 70% of that produce. I don't know how that program is working now because I haven't checked on it in a while, but it's a good initiative. We can tailor-make it to work for us. So yes, we need to produce more. We need to make sure that we actually go into these malls and see what people are consuming. What is it that we can produce locally? I know people will say that it's easier said than done, but you see the challenge we have, why things don't work out is lack of political will, lack of just making sure that let's do this thing. If you look at the story of Singapore, it was just an issue of political will, trying, and we're not saying everything is going to work out. Certain things are going to fail, and the best way to actually do most of these things is to let the private sector run this thing. It should not be the government. There's a lot of ideas that the private sector has. The manufacturers, they have been complaining. The Zambia Association of Manufacturers have been complaining about certain policies that are not being taken care of by the government. All those people, if there were policies, were taken into consideration, they can actually double their GDP contribution to the economy from the current 10%, I should believe that's what they are, to maybe 20%. The financial services sector, we need to build certain policies, that would actually double. There are a lot of people that are not banked, in City Market, in Kulima Tower, in all these markets. That's cash that's just running around. So what can we do to make sure that cash goes through the banking system so that we can also build our financial services sector GDP contribution? Because if that money is going into the banking system, we are going to grow our GDP contribution of financial services sector. So there are all those things that we can do. But do we have the political will, or we are just playing the same politics of UPND versus PF, this and that, and wasting time on things that won't help this country?
Well, our dear viewers, you are watching National Matters, and our guest today is People's Alliance for Change Park President Mr. ANDYFORD BANDA, and we've been discussing quite a number of issues so far. But however, the beauty about this program is that you are able to go back to our Facebook page or our YouTube channel and be able to listen to what you might have missed and be able to catch up here on the Camnet TV National Matters. And now, our dear viewers, in case you want to join the conversation by engaging on our guest today, you are free to do so and send us that call, and we'll be happy to take your perspective here on this program. Additionally, you can leave us a message and we'll be able to read it out here on the Cabinet National Matters. Now, moving on, Mr. Banda, I have to bring you to drag your attention to this other important national issue, which we cannot do away as we have our conversation today. Looking at the issue of cholera, it has been topical. We are seeing that cumulatively we have now officially recorded over 12,000 cases, and as of just within 24 hours we had 449 cases recorded, and discharges we had about 429, and admissions we have 894. And talking about the aspect of fatalities, we also have since the pandemic started, about 498 people have died due to this pandemic. It is really affecting us, and we have seen quite a number of interventions. But however, as People's Alliance for Change, what will be your take pertaining to the issue of cholera that is the country is grappling with?
Yeah, first of all, it's unfortunate, that this issue has been with us for quite some time, and we are not able to, we don't seem to find a solution. And 400 people dying is not a small number. That's a lot of people that have died, and would like to pass our condolences, to the families that have lost, their loved ones. But you see, these things have been known. I mean, they're known, they're there. The people in government, they know that, these things will happen, but they just don't do anything about it, which is a very sad thing. For me, the issue of cholera is like the issue of roads. If you drive a car and roads are not maintained, your car is going to be damaged, and your cost of depreciation, cost of maintenance is going to go up. So the problem is that, yes, we can tell people to be clean, we can tell people to be washing their hands and be smart, which is good. That's the first point, everywhere. Even people who live in these suburbs, in Ibex, Kablonga, wherever, they do that. They wash their hands, they do that, and what, it's a standard. But we have let these neighborhoods or these compounds, be overpopulated without proper amenities. The only thing that we do is time and again, when we are campaigning, us politicians, we're like, oh, I'm going to put a drainage when I come here. But that, in that place, the drainage really, it can't work, because of the way this township was designed, and as a result, you find that when it's rain season, water is not moving, there's a mulibidoti, manzi, and all that kind of thing. And, diseases start coming out of there, cholera and other diseases, bilharzia, all that kind of thing. So, we need to start thinking big. I've heard, statements from the president, from the Minister of Local Government about the plans of government to actually identify certain areas and they start building new places for people to migrate. Now, this is a good statement, but if we go back to the budget, we should ask ourselves whether really there is money for such activities to happen. So it has to take a lot of planning. And when I say planning is that if you take me out of Kanyama today and you say, no, we have found land for you or a plot for you, for example, what's the name of that place? Because Chongwe, there's no place. There's no area. After Chongwe is what? After Chongwe, there's
Rufunsa.
In Rufunsa. If you take me out of Kanyama today and say, no, Rufunsa, what am I going to be doing in Rufunsa? You know what I mean? So it's a lot of planning because there's economical issues there. There are people that stay in Kanyama, they go to city market to sell their thing. That's how they have lived their lives for the last 15, 20 years. And then you cannot just approve them today and say, no, mucho karero, mwendo kara kufunsa, or mwendo kara kukafiwe, or mwendo kara kuti. You have to look at all those things. So for us as PAC, the easiest thing is, and on the other hand, I think we are all in agreement to say that the government has been saying that they do not have the money. They don't have the money, you know, to do a lot of projects, and that's why they're going to these public-private partnerships. So where are they going to get the money to start, you know, housing projects? You know, I've been seeing, following President William Ruto of Kenya, launching a lot of housing projects. I've been following President Cyril Ramaphosa. Last week he was launching some, you know, housing projects. Last week, you know. But in Zambia, do we have the budget to do that? So if we don't have the budget, this is how now we have to put our heads together and say, you know what, how do we do this thing? You know, how can the private sector come in? How does, you know, the banking and financial sectors come in? And what is the role of government into this? So what we do, most of the people that, you know, operate in city market, they are the people that actually live in Kanyama, you know, they are the people that live in Tendere, most of the people that operate in Kulima Tower, and in all these, you know, places, they live in these areas. So we have a base there. So we have a number of people that actually have an income. You know, they've got some money that they can spare, you know, to actually maybe build a house, but they don't have land. You get the point, you know, and their incomes are not structured. So a bank like Zambia National Building Society is not going to wake up today and say, you know what, let's build land for these people, because, I mean, let's build houses, because yes, they've got an income, mama gulisa mu city market, bagulisa ma vegetables, vovara, you know, whatever they sell. But their incomes, we can't tell bapanga zingati per month. So the best thing that we need to do, I mean, to make life easy for the government, for a government that does not have money, which is in debt, is to make sure that you know, we restructure, you know, that area. You know, I'm going to give you again an example of Singapore. When Singapore was coming, they actually had to build certain strategic infrastructure to enable certain investors to be comfortable in that place. For example, strategic infrastructure can mean, like, for example, in the tourism sector. If you want to grow the tourism sector, you heard that the president did, you know, when there was this health summit that happened, he did realize that there was not enough bed space in Osaka, because almost all the places were taken up. So strategically, if you want to grow the tourism sector, what you need to do is to build hotels. You need to build nice lodges, you know, resorts. If you go into Kafue National Park and tourists wants to see animals there, and then there's nowhere to sleep, you know, then you're not actually being clever. Back to cholera and to city market. So when the banks wants to capture that money that is in city market. They want to capture that money as in Kulima Tower, you know, and everywhere. But when they go, they'll find a person who is selling on the floor. Pants. You know, when a bank employee goes there and they want to do KYC, know your customer, they can't do know your customer because there is no fixed board there.
As you are on that thought, someone wants to interact with us. May I pick this call?
Sure.
You know, you are through to National Matters. Good evening.
Hello, good evening. How are you?
Fine. How are you, sir?
I'm okay.
Your name and where you are calling us from?
I'm calling you from Dola. My name is Chileshe.
Mr. Chileshe, you can go ahead with your contribution.
Yeah, I want to take you back to where we were discussing Kasumbalesa, that's from Angola to the border.
Yes, sir.
You are saying that been given to the foreigners. Don't you know that sometimes foreigners, they run the company better than we Zambians? We Zambians, we are lazy. I'll give you an example from Dollar Line company. Can you just imagine if you tell much to their new country was there, but they are running better than Dollar Line company, all owned by JCPM. Don't you think if Dollar Line was given to the Chinese or other?
I think.
So you want to do a mistake. Sometimes the government, before giving somebody a contract, they do research and they find that foreigner can run better than the Zambian. So sometimes we should appreciate what the government is giving us, because they don't want us to be stranded where, but you give the Zambian, then you close the company. Even these questions, if they are given to Zambians, they can close completely. So that's my contribution.
Thank you for your contribution, Mr. Chileshe. There you have it. That is Mr. Chileshe from Ndola giving his perspective. there was a point that you had mentioned earlier pertaining to Kasumbalesa and how we are externalizing resources, our dollars there. And then before you do that, you were also on the floor talking about explaining.
Okay,
the
so
KYC.
I'm getting back to what you said, but you've already upset me, Mboya, on the issue of saying Zambians are lazy. So we're going to fight on that one very soon. Just wait for me. So let me finish. So in short, let me not even waste time because people have started calling. So what we're saying is that the government needs to come up with a policy to ensure, that, for example, right now, markets and the bus stations are run by the council. It's not working. So why can't we build a policy where these things are run by the private sector? We know that the history of markets and councils has been abused by cadres. Getting money, intimidating people, saying who should be there and whatnot. Now, what we need is we need to actually let the public-private partnerships, take care of these markets throughout. Just let them go. Let the government let them go. Let the council come into a revenue share with the private sector so that they are run by the private sector. In conjunction, NAPSA can come in because, you can imagine the thousands of people, thousands and thousands of people that are in this market, and if NAPSA was to actually, if these markets were properly structured, as PAC we call these, we need to build financially intelligent markets. So in short, what I was saying, like the way Singapore did by building a strategic infrastructure, the way we talked about strategic infrastructure, in the tourism sector, to sort out the issue of quality, we have to start by organizing the incomes of the people that work in those areas. And the only way that we can organize the incomes, it's difficult for a bank person or bank sales rep to go and actually register someone for a bank account who's got no place of trade. We're not even talking about going to their homes in Kanyama. We need to give them a proper place to trade from. And that can only happen if we increase, the capacity of these markets and make them financially intelligent so that ngabafuma back bank buy someone yabamona to shop number 240 shakuti baba wa soko hapa. This is what he does. Easy. It will be easy for the banks to now capture. And when we talk about financial intelligence markets, and this is where we talk about technology coming in, where these markets can actually run cashless. When you go there, you should know that you're not going to do cash. Either you're going to swipe or you're going to use the mobile money or something like that. So that money can be going to the banking system. And then when these people's incomes are organized, ZAMBIA'S, Zambia Building Society now can say, what? We know how much Mr. Soko makes on this shop number. He makes 30,000 in terms of sales in a month.
Wait, let's pick this call.
Now remember what Mr. Cheshe said, so we can take another one.
Yes, you are through to National Matters. Good evening.
Thank you very much.
Your name?
Mukuma from Livingston.
Okay, Mr. Mukuma, you can go ahead with your contribution, sir.
Yeah, you should be remembered.
Yes. Mr. Anthony Banda, you are my mulamu. I'm married to Banda.
Okay.
What you are talking there as a presidency on the touchline, waiting to be ushered in as the next president of Zambia. You are just talking things which are serious. You don't have bracket codes. I want to give you an example. Not only you, but even other political leaders. You don't have solutions to call a law. Let me just give you one simple example of how you can depopulate Lusaka. The cause of cholera in Lusaka, it is a massive population. There's a massive drift of people from rural areas into the urban areas, and that is Lusaka. They are following industries. Now let me give you one tangible, viable example.
Mr. Mukuma, yes, we can hear you.
Yes, for example, there are these industries that make chickens, that make supermarkets, that make toffees from milk. You tell them that there is the land in Ikanja, there is the land in Tundumwezi. Let them bring those industries that make such products from maize situated in these places like Kundumesi and Chikanta here in the Kalomo area. So when those industries are spent massively here, then you give them tax amnesty. And the people now from Lusaka, they will come to these other places, depopulating Lusaka. That is one viable example I can give you. These other examples I am not going to give you, because I've seen that you politicians of Zambia, you don't have solutions to this dilemma of Zambian situation. Number two, you want to be a president of Zambia. That's why you are the president of this alliance for political party, what? Yeah. Now, the question is this. Being given the chance to become a president of Zambia, what is your take on the Barroso and the agreement? Let me rest there. Thank you. God bless you.
Mr. Mukuma, thank you very much. They are from Livingston. We value your opinion. Remember that every opinion counts. And Mr. Banda is going to respond
so I'm going to finish now
those perspectives.
So now, Mr. Mukuma, so what we need to do is that, so once we organize the incomes, the building society is going to come in. NAPSA, NAPSA, has got shares in one of the, two banks, what's the name?
NATSEV?
Not NATSEV. They've got shares in certain banks. So we can just build a strategy, where if the incomes are known, for example, if a person whose income is known that, like in terms of volume, and if they can save maybe 100 kwacha per month, or 50 kwacha per day for the next 30 days, you will find that you'll be able to save 1,500, which is possible. A bus driver can save 100 kwacha in a day, but he doesn't know that his income is that organized. We've done this. Mr. Mukuma can say we don't have plans. We have plans. We know that a bus driver can actually save 100 or 200 in a day. If a bus driver is cashing 500, for example, and you say, he bus was I-70, and he Okambo I-70 bus, instead you're cashing a 500 because cashing a 700, they'll manage. So now imagine if that 200 kwacha is going towards housing, times the 30 days, that's 6,000. Paying towards what? Housing. But the only way these things can be done is by organizing the incomes, so that there's a system, that makes sure that that money is channeled to wherever it's supposed to go. So the starting point is strategic infrastructure, upgrading the markets. Now, what we do is that once we do that, we can get a land, maybe Kuchiranga or Okuti, and start low-cost housing. Now, those people are going to start, most of those that have got incomes, we start first taking out the ones with incomes from the compounds. We start to decompose, we come up with a system, and start taking out people out of those areas. The government doesn't need to spend anything, on building new markets. It's just about building policies where other public-private partnerships, public-private partnerships comes in. There's a gate checkings, there's other revenues that can be built through modern markets, advertising, in those, it's a lot of stuff. So, and can you imagine how many markets we have and how many people are operating these markets? And then we need to put laws. Here in Ibex where we are, there's a lot of this to my home shops. We need to stop these home shops. They're disorganizing our neighborhoods. Look at what's happening in Tendere. If you drive around Tendere, like you're coming from Ali Kinkata, they're going to Tendere market that side. Almost every front house has got a shop. And in those shops, they're selling alcohol. And these are areas where cholera is coming from. So now, if you build, modern markets, those shops must be cancelled. They should not be shops in front of houses. Everyone must operate from what? From the market. And then when these people's incomes are organized, now we can talk about low-cost housing from the same people that are income earners, whether it's the bus drivers or marketeers. Then we can start talking about what Mr. Mukuma is talking about. But what Mr. Mukuma, I'll start with Mr. Mukuma. What Mr. Mukuma needs to understand is that, it's not just because the Pachuca Minis is so Pankar industry. There's a reason why a place like, like in Osaka, I think almost every town, major town has got what they call an industrial area. Because there's a lot of facilities. If we take National Brewery is the one that makes Maheo to Dudumwezi. I mean, is there electricity there? Is there, phone lines? Do they have towers there? Do they have a proper road? That's the reason why these companies are in town. So the first is, the problem we have is that we have not looked at the income earners. Once we sort out the income earners, the incomes are going to go up. We can do low-cost housing. We can boost their, we can boost these industries. People can actually even move out of these compounds and start living in certain areas such as Chalala and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But we need to actually organize the income earners, and these are probably 1 million. Just imagine, just to focus on this project. And we're not talking about just City Market or Kulima Tower or Millennium. What we're talking about, Mtendere Market. We're talking about Nakadori. We're talking about all these areas around the country. You understand what I mean? So since the government does not have money, taking industries in the outskirts is a good idea, but it also entails that a lot of these amenities, a lot of these facilities, internet, electricity, roads and what have to be there. And also you must remember that Mr. Mkuma is talking I think my sister is not talking to him nicely. He's talking like when you're producing Maheo is just milisi, then Maheo Easter. There's a lot of ingredients. I mean, if the other factories are not there that produce, for example, plastic or what they need or paper, it's inconveniencing. So we need to, it's not as easy as, let's just go and build a factory because Mez is in Dudumwezi. No. We need to actually think about this properly. Well, let's start from the income earners. Once we organize the income earners, in these markets and these bus stations, that's where we start from. We can start empowering the bus drivers to own buses. We can start empowering marketeers. We can start empowering farmers to be supplying to the marketeers. We can create a supply chain in these markets where farmers, they're not even just going there, and Soweto, wasiache tomato, vaola, we can actually make sure that there are cooling facilities so that even farmers that bring tomatoes, they bring vegetables, they don't lose that. If they can't finish selling that, they leave them in the in the fridges or whatever, so that tomorrow the marketeers, they just get from there. We come up with a system. I think these are not actually difficult things to do. What we need is that the problem we have is that the mentality we've had from colonialism is having the government to get involved in everything. We need to actually ensure that the government makes it possible for the private sector to actually handle a lot of these things. Now, I'm coming to Mr. Mkuma. The Balosi issue, I'll answer it after I talk to Mr. Chilesh. But I think I've answered your first question to say it's not just as easy as, let's go and build a factory. I've explained that. There's a lot of things that a factory would need to be built. Even when they are operating, there are things that they need that they can easily get when they are stationed in Musaka, as opposed when they are stationed in a village. Those are things that you need to understand. Now, before we come to Balosi, let's talk the economy. Mr. Chileshi, I think the idea of saying that
lazy. Zambians are lazy.
The idea of saying that Zambians are lazy is, that's a colonial mentality. Zambians are not lazy. And if you talk about Ndola Lime is a parastatal. And you see, if you look at the history of Africa everywhere, why parastatals have failed, is the idea of tribalism, the idea of nepotism. If you are Bachileshinganimo, why give up Ndola Lime, if you have a brew, ndifo wako nchito, okay, ndanakufaira nchito, mwamuvika ku human resource. Ndifo wako nchito, ndanakufaira nchito, mwamuvika ku accountants. So you find that these parastatals, are prone to abuse, and they have a lot of people that are working there who are not supposed to be there. People who are actually not competent, maybe not even lazy, but that is not the area of expertise, or that's not the area of their passion. But they're just there because they just want to survive. They want to wake up in the morning, they knock off at 5. But if these companies were run by private, businessmen, private Zambian businessmen, there are a lot of Zambian businessmen, private, who are running big companies, because these are not, there's no government involvement. So what we need, like I said, we need to actually put this in the hands of the private sector. There's nothing wrong with having, Zambian businesses partner up with local people in certain projects. There's nothing wrong with that. But what we cannot say is Zambians are lazy. The system has marked out Zambians. The system has made it difficult for Zambians to make it. That's why people come up with this mentality, which we should change. I cannot support that. I cannot endorse the idea that Zambians are lazy. All I can tell you is that the system that we have in this country has marked out a lot of small and medium enterprises. And this is one of our biggest disappointments as the People's Alliance for Change, because when the UPND government came into power with the formation of the Small and Medium Enterprise Ministry, we expected that there was going to be a revolution in that area, and where a lot of SMEs today would have been structured, they would have been having a lot of support, a lot of businesses would have been in the hands of Zambians, a lot of businesses, would have, or owned by Zambians, would have thrived. But there is no difference with what is happening today and the time when there was no Minister of Small and Medium Enterprise. Zero. Same old things that are happening, struggling on the streets, small and medium enterprise are still struggling. We don't have a plan. So what we need is we need people with ideas to run these things. Once we have people with ideas to run these things, then we are not going to have all these challenges that we're having. We're not going to call Zambians lazy. Let's give them a chance. And we need to protect, like the president said, positive discrimination. We need to protect certain sectors, certain businesses, for Zambians, so that Zambians, so that we can have the dollar locally. We cannot just say, no, Zambians are lazy, so we're going to be buying things at an expensive price, expensive rate, because, we are taking out the dollars. No, we should change our mindset. Now, the bigger issue, the balance issue.
Do you have a say on that?
I think for people to actually understand these things, they need to understand the history of Africa. You see, and the challenge that we have. Do you want me to answer the Baloso issue? No.
You can tackle it, so
okay.
We move on from Mr. Mkuma.
Mr. Mkuma, what every person needs to understand when it comes to the Baloso issue is to understand the genesis. And the genesis comes from the Berlin Conference that happened in 1884, in Germany, when the European powers came and divided Africa, in a way that they felt like they are going to benefit themselves. That is where the challenges of Africa started from. Now, if you look at almost every country in Africa, they've had a challenge, being united, because the system that was there before the Berlin Conference was that people used to live in their own small, kingdoms, whether it's in the Barose or it's in the Bemba Royal establishment or wherever, without actually worrying about who's going to be the president of this, country or territory. So when the European powers came, they actually put people together in territories, people who never lived together, people who never believed in the same things, people who never shared their cultures. You have examples like Chad. Chad, you find that when they were sharing Chad, the French, on the northern side, they were Muslims. On the southern side, they were, Christians. So now when these colonial powers were living, they expected one person, to be president, of this country called Chad. And yet you have a lot of these people from the north who are Muslims and the south who are Christians, and they didn't share anything in common. So that's why you have seen that Africa has had a lot of conflicts, because people have had their desire, to live, on their own. If we are Muslims in this north, we want to live as Muslims. We don't want a Christian president to run over our affairs. And if we're Christians, we want to be Christians. We don't want a Muslim president to run our affairs. So the issue of the Baloso issue is that I think the founders, one of the countries, from my studies, that actually managed the issue of tribalism well, and that's the reason why I think this is why we need to actually give a lot of pecs to President KK, and that's the reason why we don't have a lot of conflicts in Zambia, is the way these issues were, handled. I think Zambia is one of the few countries in Africa which, actually has northwestern, western, southern, northern, and I think Mchinga just came, and it was a very wrong name. We should have said maybe, northern, eastern, or whatever, But the idea was that, if we start giving names like Balose, Ujundu, Kubarenje, Kwahai, it was going to create that, like, I don't know if you understand, like identity, to show that, this place is this side, this place is this side. So they were very clever to use neutral names like Northwestern, Western, so that to avoid, these divisions. So, in all honesty, I believe that, the issue of Balose is a foregone conclusion. That is what, I think I support what President Hakainde Hichilema said, to say, what, we need to just come to the realization that, this thing will not happen. And I'm not going to actually try and lie and say, no, because I want votes in Western Province, so we're going to, when I become president, we're going to look at that issue. I think the president, I even saw one of my young boys, posting to say that there's no president who has actually been very open, about this issue. I think President HH was very open. He just said, there's no country called Balose. We are one country. We are one Zambia, one nation. And that's the issue. And in the same vein, we don't encourage things like Omoz Kumawa, things that, look at, this area. What we need to do, and what we need to realize is that, there are a lot of people that are staying, a lot of losses that are staying in the Copper Belt, they're staying in Lusaka, they're staying in Eastern Province, a lot of Easterners that are staying in many parts of the country. What we need to do is that we should all strive together to build a nation where development goes to Balose, development or in Western Province, development goes to Eastern Province, development goes to Rapula, development goes to Northwestern Province, development goes everywhere. That is what we need to fight for. This issue of, no, we want to rule ourselves, we want to secede, we're tired of being in Zambia, I think that, to be honest, it creates confusion. And I just want to say that, the president was right, because these are things that, have created conflicts in Africa. All these conflicts you hear about, whether it's in Sudan, whether it is in Congo, whether it is in Rwanda, all the conflicts you hear about in Nigeria, and all these African countries, these are tribal wars. There's nothing about them. They are just tribal wars. It's not even about, in Africa we've got so much resource, we are actually cursed because we fight for resources. People are not fighting for resources. It's a fighting for the balance of power. There are tribal wars that have been happening in all these countries, and all these tribal wars were caused from 1885, 1884, during the Berlin Conference, when people were grouped in areas where they're not supposed to be. You have to start living with the, if you're an Easterner, you have to start laughing with the, these Bembas. If you're a Tonga, you have to start laughing with the Northwesterners. You have to find a way of living in harmony. So, I believe that the time has moved, and I think people who are teaching the young generation, especially Northwestern, about these divisions, I think they're doing a wrong job. I think we need to start moving. Our children, they don't, there's been intermarriages. We need to start moving from this mentality. That's why sometimes I say, I think we need to get rid of some of these old politicians, because they're the ones that have got this mentality of tribalism. We need to start moving from these issues, because our children don't see the importance of these things. Like, okay, this place has to secede, or in Kumawa people have to be treated in this way. They don't see the importance. All they want is a society that gives an opportunity. It's a society that gives an opportunity to have a good education. Once they have a good education, if they want to work, they've got an opportunity to work. If they want to run a business, they've got an opportunity to run a business. And this is how countries like America, have developed. That's why they have, the richest person in the world is not even an American. He didn't grow up in America. He's South African. They have brought in Israelis. They brought in the Chinese. You have Obama, whose father was a Kenyan, but he was good enough, and he became the president of the United States. So we should actually just remove this mentality, and focus on development. Focus on building a society that distributes the resources of this country equitably. If Balose is what is the most underdeveloped, or Western Province is the most underdeveloped province, what has caused that? We need to start those things. Is it discrimination? Is it this or that? We need to start those things and then correct them. that is what the government should be doing. You know, we should not be doing politics of Balose. We should be correcting what the grievances are. On top of these tribal things, and one of the reasons why people want to say, us, we want to rule ourselves, is because other tribes, they feel marginalized. They feel like, you know, it's a machijuba. So better, you know, it is only achievement work. You get the point. So that marginalization, you know, makes it, you know, it makes it possible to bring these ideas. You know what? We want to rule ourselves. We want to actually have our own thing. But like I said, these things won't happen. What we need to do is that we need to support government, the government must actually work hard to ensure that these imbalances that have happened over the years are dealt with. You know, I heard one of the MPs from Northwestern talking about, you know, dividing, you know, like coming off the federal state. The federal state can't work in Zambia. You know, it cannot work. Even in Nigeria, the reason why there was a federal state, because these tribal wars were real there. You know, they were real. But in Zambia, we have learned to live as one. We have learned to love one another. You know, we have intermarriages. You know, me, for example, Asoko, me, I speak Tonga, I speak Lenje, I speak Bemba, although Bemba chop Kwanika, but in Makamba. You know, I speak Chewa, I speak Nyanja, you know, and I can greet in Lozi, I can greet in Luvali, and all that kind of thing. And this is the Zambia that we want, a united Zambia, in a way you are proud of speaking some of the languages that come from all these areas. You know, I'm half Tonga. I mean, if you can imagine if people in Ujundu, Bamba, actually they want to rule themselves. So where do I go? Should I go to Southern or I should go to Eastern? You understand? So we can just create unnecessary confusion. So what we need is that the government needs to actually promote unity in this country, and unity also means that, you know, resources of the country are divided equally across the nation, whether it's in Western Province, in Eastern Province, in Wapula, and everywhere. So that's my answer.
Allow me to take the last call for the day. Hello, you are through to National Matters. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, may we have your name and where you are calling us from? You said, Mr. Okay, you can go ahead with your contribution, sir.
Good evening, the moderator.
Good evening.
Is that Mr. Kamuso?
We have Mr. Banda here who is
Okay. So, what I'm trying to contribute is that you mentioned to say the home shops. He gave an example of the to say the home shops are contributing to cholera and the like. But who gives those licenses to trade? Is it not the government of the day? And I thought the government of the day, for them to give those people to trade, they come on the ground and inspect. Is it not so? So maybe we can try to clarify that.
Okay.
Okay, now we've gotten your perspective. Mr. Banda will right away respond.
So, first of all, I'm not sure whether those home shops are licensed, especially in a lot of these, you know, of course the council comes, council, by checking out whether those places have got licenses and stuff like that. So I'm not sure, you know, whether those are licensed, but obviously there must be something wrong, because most of those places, they don't have proper amenities, they don't have proper, you know, toilets and whatnot. So there could be one thing, either most of them are running illegally, and the council maybe don't have manpower to make sure that they enforce, you know, controls in those areas, and it could be that you know, or they have been licensed. I mean, we don't know, you know. So, but the issue also, we need to understand that when we see those things, we should not just look at the problem of cholera. Yes, cholera is being spread from there, but you know, what we like to do in Zambia is that we go into town, we find, street kids, and then we just chase them, or not street kids, rather the street vendors, and we just chase them without actually creating a solution. So one thing I've noticed that Zambia is more of an entrepreneurial country. People like selling things, whether it's in the streets, whether it's home shops, or it's in the markets. So that should be our focus. That should be the focus of government, to make sure that there are solutions for everyone. And the solution is to make sure that those home shops are creating a problem. 400 people have died of cholera, but the government also needs to understand those people need to eat. Maybe some of those that run those home shops are just renting, and the people who live, they actually survive based on that. So we need to find a solution to make sure that we build markets, so that those people, when there's a place to trade for them in Tendere market, they're going to pay rent, like the way they're paying at that home shop or whatever. Because most of those home shops are not run by the people who stay there; they are run by other people. So we need to actually make sure that we build modern markets. We need to talk to the Chinese. These are things that we need to actually work with the Chinese, government on, or the Japanese government. I know there was a Lusaka plan done by JICA. We need to work with the Japanese government, the Chinese. We need to collaborate so that we can actually change our society. When the president was coming from China, he said that, societies around the world, some societies around the world are so organized, but it looks like in some of our societies we cherish confusion, But you see, we need to start sorting out that confusion. That confusion is also an opportunity. When those people start trading in markets, we'll be sorting out a lot of our problems, and those people will actually be able to organize their incomes, like I've said. So the council needs to look at that, but it's also difficult, just to chase people, and then what are they going to eat, So we need to actually look at this serious. And for me, my advocacy is that let these issues of markets and bus stations be dealt with through public-private partnerships, with other, private businesses. And like we said, preferably majority ownership should go to the local people, not cadres or people who just support UPND. People must actually present proper business proposals on how they are going to do this. For me, my advocacy is that the banking sector, the Bank of Zambia, the NAPSA, local government, Ministry of Health, and SME, they need to sit together and actually design standard markets, that are going to incorporate everything. Ministry of Agriculture and all that are going to incorporate everything. If I go to Mtendere market, I should be able to drive into a market, buy my vegetables and drive out without any inconvenience. We can build upstairs markets. Down we're selling vegetables, patibulisa vovala, pajatibulisa phone accessories, what we organize ourselves. So we have an opportunity to organize ourselves. And any investor who is going to invest in these markets is not going to make a loss, because people will be paying rent. So what the council needs to do is to go into overdrive, to make sure that there's organization, into these markets. There's organization into the city. It's 2 years plus of the UPND. Kulima Tower is getting more confused. It seems like the president, is very impressed and pleased with his record of getting cadres out of the market, but that is not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is how those people are going to trade. I know a cousin of mine who actually drives a big bus, and he tells me that Kulima Tower, munga isema big bus, lero ulongeramo, marosu ulongeramo, marosu. So there was aronga mutani mu station, maronkam road, because there's no space. So you have to keep giving each other spaces. But these are people that make money. These are people that actually go home with 200 kwacha. Now imagine if that money was being banked or being put somewhere, plus their salaries and what. You find that they've got actually income more than some of these civil servants, So let's get the markets organized. Let's get, the bus stations organized. Let's design a modern, financially intelligent market. And then once we do that, we can actually scrap off street vending. We can scrap off home shops, because who have proper markets, people can drive into these markets to buy things. They can be drive-through areas. They can be, places where people are walking there. All these things we need to put in place. We need to organize our society, and this confusion that is in our society, creates also an opportunity. Bill Clinton said, "Turn towards the problem you see," and I want to urge the government of Zambia to turn towards the problem they see. They should turn to the confusion in these markets. They present a greater opportunity to actually build our financial services sector. In fact, before I forget, Mr. Soko, there was a report that was done by PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. It was a banking and non-bank financial service. Non-banking financial institutions survey, where both these, banks and non-banks, they agreed that their biggest potential is dealing with the same unbanked people in the markets. That's where the sustainability is, and we can learn, from banks like Capitec. One of the biggest retail bank in South Africa. It started in the villages. It started building products for the villages. But what we are saying is that the government, through public-private partnerships, they need to actually restructure these arrangements, with city market, with the local government, so that these markets can actually now be owned by the private sector. It's not like, if you've got, it's not like mitengo bazakwezeka. No, let's not fear about those things. We live in a liberal economy. So we need to make sure that, we come up with parameters. The city council definitely sit on these boards to protect, the interests of the people, in as much as they're going to get what, revenue from there. So I believe that we have an opportunity. The government doesn't have to worry about, restructuring of the debt, before some of these things are done. I think they can actually achieve some of these targets without actually looking at the IMF or the debt restructuring. It's all about building the right policies, the policies that are going to attract the right people to invest in these places.
Mr. Banda, I want you to wind up with a political question, which is, we've seen that various political party leaders that we have hosted here on this platform have complained that they are being victimized, in that they are not being allowed to host their political rallies. However, as People's Alliance for Change, first of all, how do you feel this administration has handled the political space? Because while those in authority have been categorical and stating that they are actually keen to ensure the rule of law prevails in this country, and that while those in opposition have been of the view that the government the country is currently experiencing a shrinking civic space. What is your overall observation?
Yeah, I think you see, I don't remember any rally that has happened, under the UPND government, outside an election, outside a by-election. So definitely the UPND has demonstrated greater levels of insecurity in that area. If the government feels like, political rallies are not a necessity for a democracy, they cannot just ban them, unilaterally, just outrightly say, let's just ban, rallies. What we need to do is that, and this is what, we can actually give credit to the PF, even if, they were pretending, they would actually call, I remember the ZCID was quite active in some of these things. And we would actually discuss, certain amendments, to certain things like the Public Order Act and all that kind of thing. When a law is not working for the government, or it's not working for the opposition, the stakeholders must sit on the table. If the government feels like, rallies are not working, they will just create confusion or whatever, they should not just sit there and just be, banishing and what. They need to come and sit with us stakeholders and say, what, we as government, I think with the time we're living in, we think this is not working. I think we need to revise it. Yes, political parties will be allowed a rally, maybe once a quarter. I'm just saying. But you see, also we should look at the history. Look at how things happen in South Africa or in Kenya. Political parties are allowed to do things as they wish. But definitely, the president mentioned, if you listen very carefully in his end of year address, I don't think he really supports this thing. But the issue is that if he was referring to an incident that I think I've not actually followed. I meant to follow up that of the UK, where they have actually amended the Public Order Act, because it's like the law just created a lot of anarchy, a lot of confusion. And I want to be realistic and say that, what, if that is the case, there's need to discuss, and see how this law can work for the government and it can work for the opposition. Do you understand? Because even when Singapore was coming up, the unions were creating a lot of confusion for the government to make progress. So they came up with laws that, worked for everyone, and the progress happened. But for the government to just sit there and say, opposition political parties will not hold rallies because, they are this and this and that won't work. Of course, other people will use those opportunities to distract government, to distract certain things, but also we need to agree to say what's the way forward. You can't just sit there and just, be denying people. The law is there, allow people to do things according to the law. I mean, if the law doesn't work for you, propose what works, and then the people also know. Even us, we don't think this works. This just advantages you. The problem we have is that these laws have been created, to support one group than the other. Either it's people in government or the government, they just think about themselves. They don't look at how these laws can help us, in the next 50 years. If it's us in the opposition, we just want laws that can actually disadvantage those people in the government. So there has not been a lot of balance. So we need to actually, if we want to build a society, and if we want to build strong laws, all of us, when we are sitting on the table, government and us in the opposition, we need to come with what Vijay said, we need to be mature and make sure that when we are doing these things, it's not to our advantage. It's not to the advantage of government. It's not to anyone's advantage. It is to the country and for the next 50 years.
Well, Mr. Banda, unfortunately, this is where we have to call it a day, and we have to thank you for finding time with us on National Matters.
Thank you so much, Mr. Soko, and thank you to the Cabinet crew and team for inviting us, and we hope to come forward soon. Indeed,
we'll continue interacting in the civic space as well as in the governance space, talking about national development. This has been People's Alliance for Change Parker President as our guest for today's National Matters, and we've been discussing what are the key ingredients to Zambia's economic development. The People's Alliance for Change was giving us its perspective pertaining to what they think are some of the solutions to some of the challenges affecting this country. This has been Patrick Soko. Until we meet again, keep it on Cabinet TV. Always remember that Cabinet TV is not just another channel.